Perhaps their connection was the light to guide them through this dark maze. As she stepped into the reveled chaos, she reached for the spark he ignited in her, pushing her doubts aside. Her moment of hesitation flickered like a candle in the darkness, rapidly extinguished by the urgency of escape, both from the madness surrounding her and the shadows of doubt within. Scene 64, the reunion. Raindrops tapped against the glass like a nervous heartbeat, blurring the lingering remnants of dusk into a watercolor view of the outside world. Inside the ship's atrium, where the warm, faux gold lighting glimmered off carefully polished surfaces, Lucius Tremayne meticulously sorted through the remaining supplies. He was elevated by his sense of duty, yet there was an undercurrent of restlessness that simmered beneath his composed exterior. As he methodically arranged the meager provisions on the stainless steel table, packaged rations, a few bottles of water, and assorted cooking gear, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The blood-scented crisis had driven them together and apart in ways Lucius hadn't anticipated. He longed for Taelith. Every day felt like a cruel reminder of the precarious line they walked between survival and despair. "Mind if I give you a hand?" Her voice cut gently through his reverie. Lucius turned sharply to find Taelith standing by the entrance, a half-hearted smile forming on her lips. The warm, golden light framed her silhouette, making the exhaustion in her eyes appear surprisingly radiant. He hadn't realized how much he craved the comfort of her presence until that moment. "Yeah, actually," he replied, allowing a small grin to slip through. "I'll take whatever strength you have left." "Strength? I've only been running for my life," Taelith quipped, stepping closer as she planted her hands on her hips. "The rain outside feels oddly soothing, though, like the world outside gets it. I wish we could just sit and listen." "Maybe that's because it's the only thing that hasn't tried to kill us yet," Lucius chuckled, though his humor quickly dissolved into seriousness. Where have you been?" But the wariness was heavier in her stance than their shared laughter could alleviate. Taelith's eyes flickered with something darker. "You know things are unraveling. Let's just say I had a close encounter." Before Lucius could respond, the air shifted, thick with the tension of unsaid words. The zealous laughter of Adrian and Jewel, wandering nearby, pierced the atmosphere. They were sprawled across one of the plush lounge areas, an oasis amidst chaos, tossing cards on the table. Jewel, her voice a mixture of mischief and mock horror, proclaimed, "Just admit it, Adrian. You're terrible at this game." "Hey, if people keep bluffing, how am I supposed to read them?" Adrian shot back, eyeing the cards between them. "You're lucky I've let you win so far." Taelith turned her focus back to Lucius, concern knotting her brow. There were whispers. Someone's scheming. I could feel it. We can't trust them. "They're just scared," Lucius replied, half-heartedly glancing at the duo, whose debates had morphed into a light-hearted bickering audience. Easy for them to laugh while the stakes are rising. "That's the thing, isn't it?" Taelith's eyes turned to steel. "What if we can't protect everyone? What if this ends badly, like last time?" Her voice quivered slightly, a hint of vulnerability slipping past her bravado. An uneasy silence fell between them, punctuated by distant sounds of laughter echoing off the glass walls. Lucius stepped closer, needing to bridge the divide. "You can't keep blaming yourself for what was." The words felt like a tightrope walk over an abyss, and he hoped to lead them both back to safer ground. Taelith couldn't meet his gaze. "It's not just about blame. What if I lose myself to this game? Our lives, these faces, they're all fading into a blur." Just then, Adrian's laugh erupted, cutting through the heaviness. "Next round's on me. Who's in?" He gestured with grand flair, eliciting reluctant responses from Jewel as she pouted dramatically. "Great diversion," Lucius murmured, though he knew it paled against the hurricane of emotions swirling between him and Taelith. "Let's show them we're not backing down." Yet, Taelith stepped back, moving into the half-shadow. "I don't want to get lost, Lucius. Not again." He reached for her hand, warmth radiating from his palm as it found hers. "You won't, I promise." The truth hung between them, tethering their fates, but the weight of past failures loomed like a specter. The intimacy of that moment sharpened in contrast to the chaos surrounding them. Lucius felt her heartbeat synchronize with his, and in that shared rhythm, vulnerability morphed into resolve. "We can beat this," he whispered, intensity anchoring each word. Together. Taelith finally met his gaze, and in the depths of her eyes he saw a flicker of trust, a fragile spark amid the storm. Together, she echoed, her voice stronger, igniting hope where desolation threatened to sweep it away. Scene 65, Battleground of Emotions. The dimly lit lounge of the luxury expedition ship reverberated with muted chaos. Shadows flickered against the walls as the thrum of distant alarms and the chaotic patter of hurried feet echoed through the narrow passageways. Outside, an unforgiving icebound landscape loomed, an intimidating blend of desolation and beauty, stark white against the cobalt sea. The weight of the environment bore heavily on Lucius Tremayne as he leaned against a polished mahogany bar, his usual mask of stoicism slipping just a fraction. Taelith Nuru, her breath slightly shaky, moved closer, drawing the warmth of his proximity like a moth to a flame. "We can't stay here forever. They'll find us," she said, her voice a mix of urgency and frail hope, the shimmer of her eyes reflecting the scattered light from a chandelier above. Lucius turned, meeting her gaze with something deeper, a blend of desire and trepidation. "And what do you suggest? Running out there is practically a sure death sentence." The weight of uncertainty hung between them, a fragile thread woven from fear. Taelith finally let a playfulness seep through her tension, a spark in her voice as she half smirked. "But at least it would be an adventure, right? Better than waiting here to become a frozen human popsicle." A chuckle escaped Lucius, almost potent enough to crack his thoughtful veneer. "You think I'd let you become a frozen popsicle? I'd drag you back myself," he said, an unexpected warmth settling in the air. But Taelith was not finished. She drew closer, her voice quiet yet electric. "You say that like you even care what happens to me. I'm just a liability in your grand strategy." Her eyes bore into his, demanding honesty, layers of doubt etching her features. "A liability?" He stepped closer, his fingers brushing against hers, a fleeting connection igniting a surge of goosebumps across their skin. "You underestimate your worth. I need you as much as you need me. This is not just about survival, He paused, struggling to find the right words like they might slip away any second. "Important." She could feel the weight of vulnerability blooming in the space between them. "Important?" Taelith echoed, the tremor in her voice packing more meaning than usual. "Why? Because you think you can save me from my own demons?" Lucius was taken aback, surprise and concern flaring in his eyes. "I'm not here to save anyone. I can't even save myself," he admitted, and for a moment, it felt as if the world evaporated around them, the chaos beyond muted to silence. In that vulnerable moment, memories flooded Lucius's mind, a blurred tapestry of half-formed apologies and unresolved regrets stemming from a past heavy with guilt. His fingers unwittingly moved through his hair, another futile attempt to mask the turbulent tides of emotion roiling within him. "Lucius," Taelith's empathy wrapped around the edges of his turmoil like delicate threads. "You're not alone in this. We've both faced darkness. Whatever you did, it doesn't define you." Suddenly, the lounge door swung open with a bang, interrupting their moment. Terrence, a quirky engineer with a knack for comic relief, stumbled in, a chaotic mess of adrenaline and confusion. "Hey, gang! So I found a back door to the comm system. If we can just—" "Terrence," Taelith cut in, momentarily breaking the tension. "This isn't the time for your inventions." "Who says? I'm just trying to keep the hope alive. Plus, I'd rather save us than end up as frozen corpsicles, too," he quipped, his eyes gleaming with the spark of mischief. Lucius chuckled while Taelith crossed her arms, unable to resist the gravitation of his laughter, even as the tension hung in the air. "What's your plan, Terrence? Because we're all ears." "Well, it involves using some of the ship's emergency resources to contact anyone who can help. But we're gonna need distractions." "Like your jokes?" Taelith teased, her smile breaking through the weight of the earlier conversation. "Precisely. I put my best foot forward in the face of danger." He gestured dramatically, earning a chuckle from Lucius. Lucius returned his focus to Taelith, whose expression swung from playfulness back to intensity. "Look, whatever happens next, just know that we forged the path together, yeah? You're not going to lose yourself here." "Together," she whispered, feeling the profound shift as he grasped her hand firmly, binding their fates even tighter amidst the rising storm of chaos surrounding them. Lucius didn't let go, her warmth grounding him amidst the uncertainty. The air thrummed with endless possibilities as the ship shuddered and the alarms blared louder. But for now, amid the chaos, there was a small, flickering light in the darkness, an ember of connection that promised a path forward. Scene 66, Pawns at Play. The icy wind howled as the expedition ship trembled against the encroaching storm, lashing the deck with stinging rain that soaked through Lucius Tremayne's jacket. With each gust, he felt a raw, electric tension coursing through the air, a mirror to the urgency rising within him. He leaned against the railing, his breath swirling like fog, considering their precarious situation. It was not just survival at stake, it was depth of character, the essence of who they all were. "Lucius!" Taelith shouted, her voice barely cutting through the tempest. She rushed towards him, her auburn hair whipping around her face, eyes bright and fierce. "We need to move, we can't stay here." He turned to her, captivated for a moment by the defiance etched into her features. "You're right," he said, voice taut. "Let's head below deck. We need to strategize." As they made their way down the slick metal steps, dodging torrents of rain cascading from above, the energy between them crackled like a live wire. They entered a dimly lit corridor, the fluorescent lights flickering intermittently, casting shadows that seemed to reach for them in the almost oppressive silence. The shuddering of the ship echoed their heartbeats as they squeezed into a small room laden with supplies, a temporary refuge. Once inside, Taelith's shoulder brushed against his, and he caught the warmth radiating from her skin, igniting something deep within him. They had been forced into this game of survival, yet in this dangerous dance, their connection deepened, evolving from mere convenience to undeniable intimacy. "Do you remember what Victor said about trust?" Taelith asked, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "I do," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "He thinks we're just pawns, but we can outplay him." The tension simmered between them, a taut line pulling them together, inch by inch. He stepped closer, the flickering light casting flickers of illumination on her delicate features. "If we're going to escape this, we need to get creative." Taelith nodded, determination gleaming in her eyes. "We have to gather allies. We can't do this alone." In that dim room, their laughter suddenly erupted, a fleeting release born from the absurdity of their predicament. "Maybe we can convince this luxury ship of horrors to turn into a floating soap opera," Lucius quipped, a smirk creeping onto his lips. "I can see it now. Real ship survivors of Icebound Heights. Don't forget the dramatic confessions and backstabbing," she chuckled. "We could even host a live reunion special." The sound of their laughter faded as reality tightened its grasp. Lucius's expression turned serious. "Taelith, I know we've formed an alliance, but let's not forget the stakes." She tilted her head, studying him. "What are you really afraid of, Lucius?" The question hung between them, the air thick with unspoken tension. But his heart raced, not just from adrenaline but an undeniable magnetic pull. The warmth of their connection felt intoxicating, a balm against the cold that seeped through the ship. "I'm afraid of losing this, of losing you." He finally admitted, the truth a quiet whisper against the chaos raging just beyond their sanctuary. In response, a smile bloomed on her face, a blend of hope and mischief that was nothing short of captivating. "The only way we lose is if we let ourselves be pawns," she replied, stepping closer, her eyes locking onto his. "We have to take the lead." And then, without any conscious thought, he closed the gap between them, feeling as though they were the only two people left in the world, the storm a distant memory. As their lips met in a hesitant but electrifying kiss, time seemed to stretch, wrapping around them like the depth of the ocean. It was a fusion of strength and vulnerability, weaving trust into an intricate web of desire that felt both intimidating and exhilarating. As the kiss deepened, Lucius felt the world outside slip away, leaving only the tumult of emotions swirling within him, a sense of protection, passion, and a commitment to this alliance that transcended their circumstances. But just as he felt they might drown in the intensity, the shrieking sound of metal groaning from above startled them apart. "Lucius," Taelith gasped, breaking the spell. "We need to get moving." "Right," he replied, breathless, exhilaration mingling with urgency as he stepped back, each of them shaken yet more resolved than ever. They moved swiftly, united by a growing understanding that love could infiltrate even the harshest circumstances, a powerful ally against the chaos ahead. Scene 67. A buried truth. The dim light of the ship's lounge flickered like a dying ember, casting elongated shadows across the polished mahogany floor. The vast windows framed a landscape of inky seas, the relentless waves echoing the turmoil within Lucius Tremayne. He stood by the bar, ice clinking against glass, the rich aroma of aged whiskey swirling just out of reach, like a comfort he couldn't grasp. Outside, the cold wind screamed its fury, but inside, silence clung heavily, an uninvited guest. Taelith Nuru entered the room, her presence warm and defiant against the palpable tension. She wore an expression of fierce determination, yet something vulnerable shimmered beneath. The rich blues of her attire complemented the hues of the ocean visible through the porthole, yet they also subtly highlighted her growing frustration. "Lucius," she said, her voice steady but laced with worry as she strode toward him. "We need to talk." He turned, his brow furrowing slightly at the sight of her resolute stance. "Talk? Or should we just avoid the elephant in the room?" He poured himself another glass, the amber fluid reflecting uncertain light, a metaphorical shield between them. Taelith crossed her arms, the fabric of her sleeves brushing against her skin like a reminder of her resolve. "You know this isn't what I meant." She took a step closer, the tension between them sparking like static electricity in the muted air. "I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when I know you're hiding something." Lucius's gaze hardened, steel tracing the edges of his features. Hiding or protecting? He downed the whiskey in one swift motion, the burn igniting a flicker of defiance in his chest. The secret of his past loomed over him, an unrelenting specter that threatened to unravel every fragile thread they had woven together. The quiet crackle of the ice melting in the glass punctuated the air, turning the silence into a palpable entity. "It's not just about you, Lucius. It's about us, this alliance we've built. If you're not entirely honest with me, I can't trust you fully." Her voice rose, blending with the crashing waves outside, an urgent crescendo that begged for clarity. "Trust?" he echoed, bitterness tinging his words. "What do you know about trust, Taelith? Your past is hardly pristine. You think you can judge me?" He gestured vaguely, the glass now abandoned on the bar. "I'm not judging," she retorted, anger sparking in her eyes. "I'm trying to understand. You can't push people away and then expect them to stand by you unconditionally. I'm here, but only if you let me in." As the words hung in the air, impenetrable and stark, their vulnerability collided, a complex dance of sorrow and growing affection. Lucius stepped closer, instinctively drawn toward her warmth. "You have no idea what I've been through, Taelith. Some truths are buried for a reason." The weight of his past felt heavy in his throat, familiar yet foreign, coiling around his heart. "Then let me help you dig, Lucius." Her voice softened, the plea in it palpable. "We're navigating this together. You're not alone anymore." In that moment, the weight of unspoken truths loomed large between them, pulsing with potential. Lucius inhaled sharply, nostalgia flooding him, silent memories of a darker time when his every decision had been a step down a precarious path of revenge. Yet here stood Taelith, her fierce spirit grounding him. Her very being seemed to illuminate shadows he'd thought were permanent. The tension broke, the air thickening with inevitability as he closed the distance. The scent of salt water mingled with her light perfume. It was intoxicating. "What if my truth is more than you can bear?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Taelith's gaze held steadfast, unwavering. "What if I can bear it, but you can't? Lucius, don't let your past distort your future. Let it bring you closer to who you really are." An awkward pause unfolded, charged by unspoken possibility. Lucius felt the walls close in, the tantalizing dance between them transforming from conflicting arguments to a shared vulnerability that nearly ached. He could feel the warmth radiating from her, pulling him in despite the chill of regret that had frozen him so long. Suddenly, a crash echoed from the deck above, jolting them both back to their reality, pulling the fragile moment apart as a flurry of footsteps resounded against the polished floor of the lounge. "We have to move," someone shouted, urgency threading through the air, breaking the intensity of their intimate confrontation. Lucius clenched his fists, the moment slipping away, yet he could still feel Taelith's steady presence grounding him. Fine, he said tersely, moments from turning away. But as their eyes met, a fiery determination ignited between them, a promise. We'll talk about this later. Taelith nodded, her heart racing, trapped in the whirlwind of chaos that surrounded them, yet tethered to a rising hope. Together, they prepared to face whatever awaited them above. The ghosts of their past trailing behind, but no longer dictating the course of their future. Scene 68, a desperate need. The wind howled outside the battered windows, rattling the glass and sending shivers through the air. Inside, the soft glow of flickering candles danced against the shadows of the cramped cabin, illuminating the worn faces of two weary souls. Lucius Tremayne leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching Taelith Nuru from the corner of his eye. "Do you think they'll come for us?" Taelith asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking louder would tempt fate into revealing their grim reality. Lucius remained silent for a heartbeat before responding, his brow furrowing in thought. "I don't know, but if they do, it won't be to help." Taelith turned, the flickering light catching the determination in her eyes. "Then we have to find a way out ourselves. We can't wait for someone else." Outside, distant echoes of their fellow strugglers carried through the walls, shouts mingling with laughter, as if the stakes were merely a game. Lucius clenched his jaw, fighting the urge to storm out and confront the chaos. Instead, he forced his gaze back onto Taelith, whose hands trembled slightly. "Here," he said, stepping forward. He wrapped her fingers in his own, creating a cocoon of warmth. The contrast of his rough hands against her delicate skin made her heart race, but she forced herself to meet his dark, piercing eyes. "Lucius," she started, the words hung heavy between them, quaking with vulnerability. "We can't let fear consume us." "No," he replied, the weight of his gaze pressing against her. "But we can't ignore it either. It's what we're up against." He noticed a slight flicker of doubt in her expression, as if she was consolidating pieces of an ever-growing puzzle, trying to understand their predicament and their bond. They were partners now, he realized, after everything they'd survived. Eclipsed by the circumstances of their situation, something deeper was binding them. Suddenly, laughter erupted from the hallway, bursting through their moment like a bubble. A group of their fellow passengers ducked in and out of the shadows, gossip weaving through whispered secrets as they plotted their next escape from the ship's turmoil. "I can't," Taelith said, drawing her breath in sharply. "While they're playing, we risk everything." He shook his head slightly, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth, even in the midst of their dire situation. "They may be foolish, but at least they're not lost." She couldn't help but laugh, an airy, unexpected sound. "Lost? You mean like you? Or maybe me?" "Tache," he replied, his smirk softening as he reached out to tuck a stray hair behind her ear. The surge of electricity shot through them, a jolt of something entirely new. A moment of silence enveloped them, curling like the smoke from the candles. As they exchanged glances, the outside chaos faded, leaving them suspended on the precipice of something intense. The fleeting thrill of laughter had awakened more than just amusement. It stirred an undeniable desire between them. "What are we becoming?" Taelith whispered, her voice barely audible, yet rich with emotion. Lucius leaned in, the sudden proximity igniting sparks in the air. "Something that fights, something that survives." The warmth in his voice chased away the chill of the cabin, filling Taelith with a strange kind of hope. "Together?" she asked, almost timidly. "Together," he affirmed, his fingertips brushing her cheek. The touch lingered, as if sealing a pact they both craved, to lean on one another amidst the growing dread. Just then, the doors burst open, a frigid gust swirling around them as another passenger stumbled in, breathless and wild-eyed. "We need to hide now," he shouted, oblivious to the tender moment that had briefly unfolded between Lucius and Taelith. As chaos engulfed the room once more, Lucius squeezed Taelith's hand, a silent promise lingering in the air. They were intertwined in a game more significant than survival. It was a flickering spark igniting in the shadows, waiting to set the world aflame. "Ready?" Lucius asked, his voice barely above a murmur, bracing for whatever awaited them. "Always," Taelith replied, her heart racing, an avowal of trust, of partnership, of something waiting on the brink of discovery. Scene 69. Climax of revelation. The icy wind howled against the luxury expedition ship, a ghostly serenade that echoed through the metallic corridors. The once opulent surroundings now felt like a cage, filled with the haunting specters of betrayal. Lucius Tremayne stood at the bow, the cold biting into his skin as he peered into the blackness of the churning sea below, feeling the weight of their predicament pressing on him like a coiled snake ready to strike. "Lucius!" Taelith Nuru's voice cut through the air, sharp and breathless. She emerged from the shadows, her dark hair whipping around her face like strands of midnight. "You can't just ignore everyone. We need to figure out our next move." He turned, a storm brewing in his piercing gaze. "And what would you have me do, Taelith? Host a tea party while our lives are at stake?" His tone was barbed, laced with an agitation he couldn't quite mask. "You think I want this?" She shot back, a flush of anger rising to her cheeks. "Every time we take a step forward, it feels like we're falling 2 steps back. I thought we were a team." "Team? This is a game, and you naive enough to believe we can just outsmart the bastards pulling the strings." His words sliced through the air like a dagger. Taelith squared her shoulders, determination igniting in her eyes. "Then let's stop talking about them and start focusing on us. If you want to survive, we need to trust each other." The words hung heavy between them, a bridge stretching over an abyss of doubt. But just then, the sound of laughter ripped through the tension. Up on the deck, another group was gathered, oblivious to the gravity of their situation, as Simon, the brawny first mate, performed an exaggerated dance to lighten the mood, his booming voice carrying over the waves. "School of fish, check this out," he declared, awkwardly flopping his arms and wiggling his hips, earning a chorus of laughter and shouts from the surrounding crew. Amid the crowd, Avery, the ship's engineer, leaned against the railing, eyes twinkling despite the dire circumstances. "This is the worst dance-off I've ever seen," she shouted, laughing so hard that she nearly lost her balance. "Just wait until I show you my signature move." Simon grinned, pretending to slip and tumble overboard, which sent another wave of laughter through the group. "I call it the Titanic, because the ship goes down." Yet something about their gaiety struck a chord in Taelith's heart, igniting a rebellious spark within her. She glanced back at Lucius, whose stormy countenance remained unchanged. "See?" she said, a slight smile tugging at her lips despite the chaos. "Even in despair, hope finds a way to leap." "Hope?" Lucius scoffed, the corners of his mouth twitching as he struggled to suppress a smile. "What's so hopeful about failing and dying with a laugh? Hiding behind cynicism won't save you, not forever." Taelith stepped closer, her intense gaze searching his. "You keep pushing me away, but I see you. You've got something worth fighting for deep down. It's not just survival." He narrowed his eyes, a flicker of vulnerability escaping his defense. "What do you know of my battles?" "More than you think. Maybe you think no one could understand your pain, but I get it. I've felt like I'm not enough 1,000 times, crushed beneath expectations like I'm meant to fit into a mold that was never made for me." She paused, the wind whipping through her hair as she steadied her breath. "But I refuse to lose who I am, especially not when I know what I want." Her voice softened. "You don't have to fight alone." A silence stretched, heavy with unspoken truths. Lucius felt the walls around his heart tremble, the chill in the air shifting, thawing the rigidity that shrouded his emotions. "And what is it that you want, Taelith?" he asked, voice low. "To forge my own path," she replied, the sincerity in her tone igniting a flame in him. "And to share it with someone who truly gets it." Suddenly, above their heads, thunderclouds rolled in, dark and ominous, capturing the weight of their unguarded admission. The group on deck began to quiet, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. Lucius took a step closer, feeling the pulse of their connection thrumming in the air. "You're not just a pawn in this game to me, Taelith. You're more than I realized. And maybe that's precisely what scares me." Her lips parted, a glimmer of hope threading through the turmoil of their surroundings. "Then let's not let fear drown us." He met her gaze, the storm within him calming as he responded, "Together, let's face whatever comes." The winds howled in agreement, anticipation electrifying the atmosphere as Lucius extended his hand, a promise suspended between them. Out on the deck, the laughter faded, replaced by the weight of the looming storm, but within themselves a nexus of courage was born. There, on the icy brink of despair, They'd ignited a flame that could not only save them, but blaze trails for others lost in the shadowed depths. Scene 70, brink of collapse. The sprawling horizon of the icy expanse eerily reflected the stillness aboard the luxury expedition ship. Its polished wood floors glistened in the pre-dawn light, but the atmosphere was fraught, a taut string ready to snap. Taelith Nuru stood at the bar, her fingers tracing a thin veil of frost on a glass of orange juice, the tangy aroma a pale distraction. Every breath she took felt heavier, as if the air was thick with unspoken dread. "Do we trust them, Lucius?" The words slipped from her lips, barely above a whisper, hovering in the cold air. They were mismatched vibrations against the oppressive silence of the room. Lucius Tremayne, brooding and thoughtful, leaned against the stern counter, arms crossed as if he could shield himself from the chaos brewing outside the bar's haven. "Trust is a luxury we can't afford right now," he replied, his voice edged with the sharpness of ice cracking beneath the weight of too many secrets. As Taelith turned, the tension in her shoulders seemed to magnify, igniting the corners of her eyes with flickers of defiance. "But what if it's our only chance? What if—" She paused, the implication heavy in the air. "What if this is all by design? We're in their game, Lucius." He straightened, the distance between them closing. "And who knows how to play this game better than us? We've been through worse." A silence fell, a moment where their resolve hung precariously, intertwining their fates like the storm outside. A sudden crash echoed from the adjacent cabin, sending a ripple of anxious whispers through the ship's passengers. Among them, Marisol, a savvy strategist whose quick wit often masked her insecurities, wrestled with a deck of cards across the room with Darnell, whose gruff demeanor hid an undeniable charm. The laughter that usually accompanied card games felt muted, tension coiling tightly amidst hushed breaths and wary glances. Okay, let's think this through," Marisol said, feigning nonchalance as she dealt cards. "What if we all just survive the next round? What's the worst that can happen?" Darnell raised an eyebrow, his grip on the cards tightening. "Have you seen the stakes? We either win or we go overboard. Your optimism is a little misplaced this time." This caught the attention of Nicolette and Sam in the corner, their heads close together, somber expressions flickering like shadows. Nicolette said, "Trusting them could mean the end of us. They're manipulating us. Can't you see?" Sam's brow furrowed. "But it's not just them. It's us too. Lucius has a past, and it's eating away at him. He can't just keep holding on." Overwhelmed, Taelith clenched her fists, pacing back to Lucius, desperation thrumming in her chest. "You haven't told me everything, Lucius. What did you do? What do you have to lose? Is it worth all of this?" Lucius's gaze pierced hers, revealing glimpses of his torment. Some things are better left in the dark. While the tension bubbled near rupture, the ship shuddered, a low groan reverberating as if it were voicing its own unease. A collective gasp filled the room, and Darnell slammed his cards onto the table, frustration boiling over. "We can't expect clarity when we're all cloaked in shadows. Enough dancing around." "Aren't you ever afraid?" Nicolette exclaimed, her voice rising. "Afraid of losing who you are? What is this survival worth if we're not ourselves?" The weight of her words crashed into Lucius's guarded heart. He stepped forward, closing the distance in a heartbeat. "It's worse to lose hope. I know that too well." The silence that followed was suffocating. Taelith lifted her gaze to his, defiance shifting into something more tender, a cautious understanding dawning between them. "It doesn't have to be that way. We can choose something different, something better." With fleeting courage, Lucius took her hand, electric warmth igniting between them, despite the storm outside their fortress. "Then let's choose it together," he whispered, their faces inches apart, breath mingling in the chill of the room. Marisol and Darnell exchanged glances, the air thickening with possibility. The tension transformed once more, not just of survival, but of shared burdens and burgeoning bonds, as the ship trembled against a tempest of choices outside and within. Lives hung in the balance, blurred lines of trust and betrayal, dancing encased within the icebound heart of the ship. In that moment, amidst chaos, Lucius whispered, "Nothing is worth losing ourselves, Taelith. Not in this game." The resolve in his voice resonated, wrapping around them, binding their fates tighter than ever before, as vulnerability pierced the air, leaving them more exposed than ever. Scene 71. the heart's resolve. The wind howled against the hull of the expedition ship, carrying with it the sharp scent of icy salt and despair. Amidst the chaos of the crew scrambling to contain the unfolding disaster, Taelith Nuru stood wide-eyed, clutching a railing as if it could anchor her to reality. "Lucius," she called, her voice barely cutting through the cacophony. "What do we do now?" He turned, urgency tinging his otherwise indifferent demeanor. It had been days since their first encounter, the world around them devolving from luxury to terror. "We keep moving," Lucius replied, scanning the chaos for familiar faces. "We can't let them see us falter." Nearby, a heated argument erupted. Claire and Derek, two members from the elite team, lifted their voices. "We can't trust them. They're just waiting for us to drop our guard," Claire spat, her cheeks flushed from the cold or the adrenaline. Derek, brows knitted tightly, shot back. "You think we're any better? Look where we are." The air crackled with tension, much like the atmosphere outside, thick with snow and uncertainty. Taelith could feel her heart racing, caught between the brewing storm of emotions around her and the unresolved feelings for Lucius. "Come here," he urged, stepping closer to shield her from the surrounding chaos. His eyes flared with determination, yet she sensed something darker behind them, a shadow of a past he rarely spoke about. "We have to find a way off this ship before it becomes our tomb." "Easier said than done," Taelith shot back, her frustration boiling over. "You act like you have all the answers. But what if you're wrong? What if the very people we're supposed to rely on are the ones pulling the strings?" His jaw tightened, a flicker of something dark igniting behind his calm exterior. "Don't you think I know that?" he said, intense frustration transforming his normally brooding expression. "Every instinct in me is screaming to get out of here, but wouldn't you rather take a chance than be trapped like a rat?" Claire's voice, still raised, sliced through their tension. "You're all fools to think we can just leave. There's something much larger at play." "See?" Taelith implored, gesturing toward the commotion. "If they're right, we're walking straight into a trap." An awkward silence settled like a heavy fog around them, leaving Lucius grappling with her words, torn between trust and the undeniable need for survival. The stakes were rising with every passing moment, and the ticking clock of their fate weighed down on him like a lead weight. "Trust, then. That's what we need," he declared, taking a step back to measure her. "Trust each other. Can you do that?" "I've spent years building walls," Taelith replied, her eyes glistening beneath the harsh ship lighting. "But maybe now," she hesitated, and in that moment the tension shifted, allowing a fragile light to penetrate the darkness. "Maybe now they need to come down." The words hung between them, and just as thunder follows lightning, a rush of bittersweet hope ignited in the air. Lucius stepped into her space, inches away, the world around them becoming a distant hum. "Then let's take down the walls together," he offered softly, his voice pulling her closer like a magnet. But a sudden crash echoed throughout the cabin. A shaft of ice, wrenched from the upper deck, fell, causing everyone to shout and scatter. Instinctively, Lucius wrapped his arm around Taelith's waist, pulling her toward the exits. She gasped, both from the urgency and the electric touch of his arm. As they threaded their way through the frightened crowd, the weight of desire merged with necessity. Lucius glanced down, the corner of his mouth twitching into a small smile. "I trust you, Taelith. If we make it out of this, I'll show you a world beyond these walls, a world where both of us can breathe." She felt her heart quicken. Beneath their perilous reality lay undeniable warmth, a connection that glimmered like a flame against the storm. "Then let's not wait for them to trap us," she said, determination echoing in her voice. "Let's create our own escape." Together, side by side, they edged through the disarray, knowing the dark waters ahead could be treacherous, yet somehow emboldened by the shared resolve that had eclipsed their fear, igniting a fervent hope. Scene 72, a promise unbroken. The cabin was dimly lit, the shadows of the ship stretching across the plush carpet as Lucius leaned against a wall, arms crossed, his expression a mix of determination and apprehension. The sound of the engine thrummed like an unsteady heartbeat, a reminder of their precarious situation. Taelith sat on the edge of the unmade bed, her fingers brushing absent-mindedly against the cotton quilt, a sea of unspoken words swirling between them. What if we don't make it? Taelith asked, her voice barely a whisper, filled with a vulnerability that took Lucius by surprise. He regarded her, momentarily stilled by the gravity of her question, unable to mask the turbulence within. "We will," he asserted, surprising even himself with the conviction that whispered beneath his guarded exterior. "We have to." Taelith's gaze dropped, her thoughts retreating into the depths of her fears, the flickering light casting an ethereal glow around her. "I'm not sure I can keep up with all this. It's just so much. I feel like I'm losing my grip on who I am." She didn't look up, but Lucius could sense the warmth of her words, an invitation to step closer. Shuffling forward, careful not to rush, he knelt by her side, so the distance between them shrank to nothing. "Taelith," he said softly, "you're more than this situation. You're strong, in ways you don't even see." His earnestness enveloped her, and she pulled her legs closer, almost instinctively seeking refuge in his closeness. "But what if it?" she began, her breath hitching. "What if I'm just pretending to be brave?" Lucius placed a gentle hand over hers, an anchor in the storm of her uncertainty. "Then let's pretend together." The earnestness in his tone stitched the fragments of her swirling thoughts together. There was a power in shared vulnerability, a thread he felt pulling them closer, just as he felt pulled back to his own past. "I've never really done this, trusted anyone like this," Taelith admitted, her voice a mix of defiance and fragility. Just then, laughter erupted from the next cabin over. The crew was playfully arguing over a board game, voices blending into a tapestry of camaraderie. Lucius couldn't help but smile. "Looks like they're setting a pretty low bar for our survival skills." Taelith chuckled softly, the sound like wind chimes through an open window on a summer day. "If only we could distract ourselves like that," she mused, glancing at his hand still resting atop hers. A moment of silence lingered, thick with everything left unsaid. Suddenly, the cabin door swung open, and Miles, one of their fellow survivors, barged in, short of breath. "You two won't believe this. Jenna just discovered a stash of emergency rations." "Do they include anything but tuna?" Taelith joked, the weight of their predicament momentarily overshadowed by the banter. "Only if we're lucky. But that's not the point. We're not alone in this. We've got each other." Miles grinned, but his eyes flicked to Lucius, an understanding passing between them. "Sure, because we totally want to be in a permanent state of civilization, with a bunch of people bickering about nothing," Lucius quipped, an odd lightness breaking through his guarded demeanor. "Competitive snacks aside," Miles continued, "we're going to survive this together. That's what matters." As he left, a sudden heaviness returned with the closing door. The air shimmered with a mix of tension and unknowing. Taelith turned back to Lucius, her expression now resolute, the flicker of laughter still dancing in her eyes. "So, what's our plan, hero?" He smiled at the term, though it felt foreign in these circumstances. "First, we survive. Next, we promise to be there for each other, no matter what happens." "I promise," she replied, leaning in slightly nearer, their foreheads almost touching. "Even if I'm not sure how." "Even when it seems impossible," Lucius whispered, the timbre of his voice steady, heart racing for once. He believed it too. "Together, then," she said, a fierce resolve igniting between them, illuminating the encroaching darkness. As they shared that breathless moment, the chaos of the world outside faded, and for an instant, they were simply two souls intertwined against the odds, an unbreakable promise emerging as they faced an uncertain future. Scene 73. Emergence of the underdog. The ship rocked slightly, the chilling wind howling as it cut through the frigid air, echoing the chaos that simmered in the hearts of the contestants. The vast, glittering expanse of the icy ocean reflected the fading light of a sun that had abandoned hope beneath heavy gray clouds. Lucius Tremayne leaned against the railing, the cold metal pressing against him like the weight of unspoken fears and unconfessed truths. The distant sound of laughter could be heard from the far end of the deck, a sharp contrast to the somber atmosphere that enveloped the majority of the expedition participants. As he scanned the group, anxiety slipped through his fingers like grains of sand. The ever-watchful Taelith Nuru moved among the contestants, encouraging anyone willing to form a united front against their increasingly dire circumstances. Her ginger hair fluttered in the wind, framing her earnest expression as she clutched a makeshift map, pieced together from whispers and hastily drawn diagrams. Her quiet resolve was a beacon, drawing others to her, even as the icy chill gnawed at their spirits. "Look, I understand your worries," she said, addressing a cluster of anxious faces. "But we have to work together. We can't just sit here waiting to be hunted like animals. We're smarter than that." "Smarter, sure," replied Kieran, a burly man with a thick Scottish brogue, his arms crossed defensively. "But we're also outnumbered. What chance do we have?" Lucius stepped forward, feeling the heat of a nascent rage at Kieran's defeatism. "A chance? We have every chance if we decide to take it. We're not just contestants, we're people with lives outside of this game." He met Taelith's gaze, silently urging her to rely on both their instincts. In that moment, something shifted in Taelith's expression. The flicker of determination ignited behind her eyes, transforming her fear into a call to action that resonated amid the hushed crowd, drawing them closer like moths to a flame. "Exactly. We need to rally everyone," Taelith said, her voice rising to a fervor. "We can use our creativity and resourcefulness. Let's devise traps, work together to protect each other. We can expose those truly behind this madness." Cheers of tentative support broke through the silence, amplifying the swell of her confidence. Kieran's face softened. He uncrossed his arms, curiosity overtaking doubt. "All right then, what's first on the agenda?" Before Taelith could respond, a sudden shout pierced the air. "Hey, you lot better not be getting ideas!" It was Vin, their self-appointed antagonist, adorned in well-fitted designer clothes that clung to his form like a twisted promise. He smirked, making direct eye contact with Lucius. "Forming alliances, are we? You should know it's everyone for themselves now. Or no one will make it out at all," Lucius countered sharply, stepping forward. The chilly wind vibrated with tension, as others turned to watch with bated breath. "Such noble ideals, Lucius," Vin taunted, walking closer, his voice dripping with condescension. "But look where that's gotten you. You really think you can preserve morals in a game like this?" Taelith sensed the brewing clash and intervened, her warmth slicing through the icy challenge. "This isn't about moral high ground. It's about survival. We have the advantage of numbers, a united front." She turned her gaze from Vin, punctuating her assertion by surveying the increasingly intrigued crowd. "Until someone decides to take you out first," Vin growled defiantly, yet his bravado wobbled as more contestants leaned in, emboldened by Taelith's authenticity. "We'll take our chances," spat Kieran, now firmly on their side. "Fear can't govern us anymore. I'd rather fight with my friends than for my life alone." Laughter bubbled up, breaking the tension. "Friends, or a ragtag pack of losers?" cheekily added May, the witty strategist, her presence a light-hearted counterpoint. "Don't worry, Kieran. We won't let your Scottish pride be a casualty of war." Suddenly, amid the noise, Lucius caught Taelith's eye again. He stepped forward, their breath intermingling in the crisp air. Their unspoken understanding wove an invisible thread between them. "We're more than this game," Lucius stated softly, "and if we stand together, we'll show them just how underdog stories are written." A shared resolve thickened the air between them, heat brimming as the other voices faded into a gentle hum. And in that moment, beneath the cold and chaos, Lucius leaned closer, brushing against Taelith with a tentative kiss, a promise that whispered against the storm outside. As the kiss deepened, a fleeting connection that expanded beyond mere survival, a realization dawned. Together, they would forge a path through the icebound shadows, united against an uncertain future. "Let's start this revolution," Taelith whispered, pulling away, eyes sparkling with something akin to hope. Scene 74. The weight of choices. The wind howled like a chorus of the disillusioned as the luxury expedition ship rocked against the relentless waves, each rise and fall echoing the turmoil that lay within the hearts of its passengers. Lucius Tremayne stood at the ship's bow, the sharp mist chilling his skin, but his mind was ablaze with thoughts of choices made and paths uncertain. He unrolled his tightly coiled fists, drawing in the salty air, a bittersweet reminder of the burden he carried. "Lucius!" Taelith's voice broke through the cacophony, laced with urgency. She rushed up to him, the fabric of her coat flapping wildly. Her typically bright eyes were stormy, reflecting the turmoil of their circumstances. "You can't just stand here." "I'm not standing still. I'm thinking," he replied, his tone sharper than he had intended. He turned to face her, the tension pooling between them. We're trapped in a game that values survival over morality. There's nothing to think about. We need to act. But every decision we make could get someone killed. Taelith's voice wavered, the pressure of the situation gnawing at her usual resolute spirit. This isn't just about us anymore. The ship lunged forward, the hull creaking ominously as they held their ground. Taelith stepped closer, her breath hitching, the chill in the air mirroring the frost creeping into their words. "We can't lose, everyone needs us, you know that," she said, the hint of panic rising like the tide. Lucius met her gaze, his heart a tangle of emotion. "And what if I fail them? What if?" "Stop. Just stop," she cut in, her eyes flashing. "You're not alone in this. You think you have to bear it all? We all have our burdens, Lucius. You're not responsible for everything that happens." A flicker of frustration crossed his face. "You don't understand what I've done." She took a step back, the betrayal implicit in her tone. "What you did or didn't do doesn't define who you are now. You can't keep hiding behind your past." Around them, the murmurs of the other passengers coalesced like dark clouds. Melina, a spirited woman in her mid-20s, was fervently arguing with Simon, a practical jokester whose loud laugh had been silenced ever since they boarded. "Why do you think they want us to turn on each other?" Melina exclaimed, gesturing dramatically. "We have to trust our instincts, not let fear win." Simon shrugged, his mischievous spark dimmed. "Easier said than done when fear is literally standing at our door with a hammer." Nearby, Jax and Lola, a competitive duo known for their banter, exchanged glances, each caught in their own silent disagreement. "You think you can outsmart them?" Jax's smirk was both playful and cocky.